am Rahab, and this is my story. The stones of Jericho still hold the heat of the day long after the sun has dropped behind the hills of the west, and even now, so many years later, I feel that heat in my bones whenever I remember the night my whole life changed. My house was built into the city wall itself, a strange, precarious place to live, wedged between stone and sky, my window looking out over the plain toward the Jordan. From that window, I had watched merchants and soldiers and travelers come and go for years. I had watched the river shimmer silver in the mornings. I had watched dust storms roll in from the wilderness like the breath of something ancient and hungry. I did not know, on the evening those two strangers knocked at my door, that I was about to watch the hand of the God of Israel move across my life like fire across dry grass. You must understand who I was before you can understand what happened. I was not a woman of standing in Jericho. I was not invited to the feasts of the wealthy or greeted with respect in the marketplace. I sold what I had to sell, which was myself, because a woman alone in a walled city built on trade and soldiers and fear has few paths open to her. I knew what the other women whispered when I passed. I knew what the men thought when they knocked at my door after dark. I had made my peace with it, or told myself I had. The way you make peace with a wound you cannot heal, by simply learning to carry it without looking at it too closely. But I was not empty inside. That is the thing people never understand about someone like me. I still lay awake some nights and wondered if the gods of Canaan, Baal with his storms, Asherah with her groves, were even listening when the priests called out to them in the temple courts. I still felt somewhere beneath the noise of the city a kind of hollow ache, a sense that there was something true in the world I had never touched. Then came the rumors. They had been drifting into Jericho for weeks like smoke before a fire you cannot yet see. Merchants spoke of it in low voices in the market. Soldiers spoke of it while sharpening their spears on the city wall. A nation was coming out of the wilderness. Israel, they called them. And their God had done things that made grown men's hands tremble around their cups. 40 years ago, they said, this God split a sea in two so his people could walk through on dry ground while their enemies drowned behind them. More recently, we heard how they had crushed Sihon and Og, kings east of the Jordan whose armies had seemed as unbreakable as the mountains themselves. I did not sleep well those nights. None of us did. Fear had settled over Jericho, like a fog that never burned off, and I remember standing at my window one evening, watching the torches along the wall and thinking, what God does this? What God fights like this for a people who have nothing but tents and sheep? I did not have an answer. I only had the fear sitting cold in my stomach, and beneath the fear, something else I could not yet name, something almost like longing. Then, one evening, two men came to my door. I knew immediately they were not Canaanite. Something in the way they carried themselves, cautious, watchful, their eyes moving to the corners of the room, to the window, to the street below, told me they were counting exits, not pleasures. I have met enough men to know the difference between desire and fear in a person's eyes, and these men's eyes held only purpose. We need shelter for the night, one of them said quietly. I knew who they were before he finished speaking. Spies, Israelites. I felt my heart lurch, one part of me screaming that I should run to the king's guard immediately, hand them over, secure my own safety in a city that would soon need every ounce of loyalty it could find. But another part of me, quieter and somehow louder at the same time, was already moving to shut the door behind them. I do not fully know even now why I chose as I did in that moment. I have thought about it for years. I believe it was not courage alone. I believe it was something planted in me before I ever understood what it was. a seed of faith that had been growing in the dark soil of my fear ever since I first heard what this God had done at the sea. I hid them on my roof, beneath the stalks of flax I had laid out to dry in the sun that very afternoon. Ordinary work, the kind of work that made my house look like any other house in Jericho, going about its business as the sun went down. The smell of the flax was sharp and green, and I remember pressing the stalks down over them with trembling hands, praying, though I barely knew to whom I prayed, that they would lie still, that they would trust me though they had no reason to. It was not long before the pounding came at my door. "Bring out the men who came to you," the king's messenger demanded, his voice hard with the authority of Jericho's throne. "They have come to search out the whole land." My heart was a drum in my chest. I remember the taste of fear in my mouth, dry and metallic, and I remember forcing my voice to stay level even as every part of my body wanted to shake. "Yes, the men came to me," I said, "but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be shut at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." The lie left my lips smoothly, but inside I was screaming at myself. "What have you done, Rahab? What have you done? You have chosen strangers over your own king, your own people, your own city." And yet beneath the screaming, there was a strange and terrible peace, like a hand steadying mine, even as it trembled. I watched from my window as the guards ran toward the Jordan in the gathering dark, torches bobbing like fireflies down the road, and I did not move until the gate closed behind them. Then I climbed to the roof. The two men rose from beneath the flax, brushing the dry stalks from their clothes, and I saw in their faces both relief and a wariness that had not fully left them. I sat down across from them in the cool night air, the stars beginning to prick through the deepening sky, and something in me broke open, not from fear this time, but from a need to finally speak the truth that had been building in my chest for weeks. "I know that the Lord has given you the land," I told them, and my voice did not shake now, "and that the fear of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites, Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction." And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. I had never said words like that aloud before. I'd grown up among the altars of Baal, among the sacred poles of Asherah, among gods who demanded and never gave, gods of storm and harvest, who felt as distant as the moon. But something in me, something I could not have manufactured on my own, knew, with a certainty that startled even me, that the God of Israel was not like them. He was not a God among gods. He was the God over heaven and over earth, and no wall of Jericho, however thick, however tall, would stand against him. Here is the lesson I have carried since that night, and I beg you to carry it too. Faith is not reserved for the worthy. It is not measured out to the pure, the respectable, the well-born. I was a prostitute in a pagan city, a woman with no standing, no inheritance, no claim on the mercy of the God of Israel. And yet he met me there, on my rooftop, among the drying flax, and he gave me eyes to see what even mighty Sihon and Og, with all their armies, could not see. Grace does not ask what you have been. It asks only if you will believe. I made my request then, my voice breaking despite myself. "Please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." They swore it. "Our life for yours," they said, "if you do not tell this business of ours. And when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." They told me what I must do: bind a scarlet cord in the window through which I would let them down, gather my whole family inside my house when the day of battle came, keep them from going out into the streets. I remember letting that cord down through the window myself, watching the two men lower themselves along the outside of the wall into the darkness, their forms disappearing into the hills where they would hide 3 days before the search parties gave up and returned to the city. I sat alone after they left, the scarlet cord still tied to my window, fluttering faintly in the night wind, and I wept, not from fear this time, but from something closer to wonder. I did not know yet how the Battle of Jericho would unfold, how the walls would one day tremble and fall while my house alone, marked by that scarlet thread, would stand untouched amid the ruin. I did not know that I would walk out of that rubble into a new life among the people of Israel, that I would become part of the very lineage that would one day bring forth King David, and further still, the Messiah himself. I knew none of that yet. I only knew that something had shifted permanently inside me, that the God who split the sea had somehow reached all the way into my small, broken corner of Jericho and had not turned away. I have thought often in the years since about that scarlet cord in the window, how ordinary it looked, just a strip of dyed wool, the kind used in 100 households. And yet it became the very sign of my salvation, the mark that set my house apart from the destruction that swallowed the rest of the city. I think of it now, and cannot help but see something greater woven into it, a shadow of another kind of blood that would one day mark the doorposts of those who believe, sparing them from death and drawing them into a new and everlasting family. If you feel today that you are too far gone, too marked by your past, too unworthy of the notice of God, remember me. Remember that he came to a rooftop in Jericho, to a woman the whole city had already judged and dismissed, and he gave her a cord of scarlet and a place in his story that would never be forgotten. If he could reach me there, he can reach you wherever you are standing tonight. Faith is not about where you have been. It is about who you finally choose to believe. If you have been blessed by this story, subscribe, like, and share it with a friend.